Moving on with the Marine Surveying Fest 2, second edition, this one for commercial ship surveyors. Delighted to introduce you to Captain Rahul Khanna. I had the pleasure of meeting Rahul just a couple of weeks ago. We shared presentation slots on board the QE2. I was lucky enough to host the IIMS UAE branch 10th anniversary conference, and Rahul was there. I was much impressed with not only this document that he's going to talk about, which I obviously saw earlier in the year, but then hearing him speak it and bringing it to life, I think this really has some value and adds some important information into the surveying fraternity. So without further ado, Rahul, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks a lot for inviting me to share some views and share our annual Safety and Shipping Review 2019 with the surveying community, which of course is very close to my heart, obviously, because I started my career ashore with one of the leading sort of marine surveying organizations in London. That was about 11, close to 12 years ago. So as Mike said, I presented this at the IIMS biennial in Dubai a few weeks ago. So if some of you were there, so apologies for the repeat of the presentation, but I think the information is I'm hoping that you find it quite interesting. Just to give a little bit of overview on what it is, what our report is actually all about. We at Allianz produce the annual Safety and Shipping Review every year, and what we do there is essentially look at the total losses number in the shipping industry in the preceding year and slice and dice those numbers into different analysis. So we look at all the losses that have happened in the last preceding year by geography, by types of vessels, by cause of loss, and also we look at quite a lot of shipping incidents, as they're called, which include the total losses that we've seen over the years, and we compare them on how the trend has been over the last few years. Further down, we also look at the major key industry trends and our insights into what we think has been happening in the industry in the last few years, and also try to focus on the emerging risks that we think are going to be around and going to be significant drivers of losses or claims in the years to come. The report was first published back in 2012. I joined Allianz in 2011, and we wanted to get something out there, and the most readily available data was on total losses, and as some of you might question why only losses, it's because the general incident data across the globe that is available is a bit fractured and is not exactly very accurate. But total losses data is quite reasonably accurate and is available with some definite numbers and stats along with it. So in 2012 we decided to publish that, collect that data. Essentially the data comes from Lloyd's Maritime intelligence agencies, and now in the first year we used only that data, but now we're combining it with our own claims analysis. And in 2012, obviously it was the centenary of the Titanic, and that was the occasion that we wanted to produce the report for the first time. As it happened on Friday the 13th on January in 2012, Costa Concordia happened, and so we had to change the report to add a bit of additional insights. So jumping straight into the report now, what do we have? We looked at total losses. Now, just to let you know, the year mentioned in this report is 2018, which means the calendar year 2018. Unfortunately, we are talking about this report at the end of 2019, which means that the analysis is a little older, but the 2019 data can only be analyzed in 2020, and our next report will be out in March 2020, which contains 2019 data. So this report is talking about the calendar year 2018, just to make it very clear. So what you see on your screen on the left is a graph, is a chart which shows you how total losses have progressed over the years in the industry. We have analyzed these losses for quite a few number of years now, and you can see the downward trend on this chart. That back in 2009 we had 132 losses, and over the period of time, over the period of years, it has dropped down to only 46 total losses. Now, the last year, i.e. 2018, saw a sharp decline from 98 to 46. And this might be an aberration, but in general, the trend still reflects what we are saying, that over the period of last decade or so, the losses have steadily declined. I think if you go back a few further years, back in the year 2000, there were 207 total losses. So that only confirms the analysis trend that the total losses in the industry have steadily declined. Many people ask us that what do you think are the reasons for decline of total losses in the industry? And one of the clear things that I can say is that over the years, industry as a whole in general has progressed, has improved significantly in terms of safety, in terms of regulation, and we have done a lot of good work over the years, including the likes of classification societies, IMO, ship owners themselves, insurers, services industry, the surveying industry, of course, and many others. And over the years, I think their hard work has resulted in decline in total number of losses year on year. So before we start patting our back, we should also look at some other numbers, that the total number of incidents that we collect, casualties or incidents as we call it, which was in 2018, 2,698 incidents, they have remained consistent year on year, and they've declined just by 1%, which tells us another side of the story, that although the total losses have declined, the incidents have actually remained the same, more or less the same. And as you will see further down in my presentation, the incidents have actually become a lot more complicated, more expensive, and larger in scale. So again, total losses, 46 total losses in 2018, and we start to look at where these total losses have happened and what were the causes of these total losses. So as you see now on this slide, if we divide the total losses or slice and dice the losses by the top 10 regions, you will see on the chart on the left that South China, Indochina, Indonesia, and Philippines is the top region for total losses, followed by East Mediterranean and Black Sea, and followed by British Isles, North Sea, English Channel, and the Bay of Biscay. Now, we had a bit of a discussion back in 2012 as to how to divide these areas, but trust me, it was a difficult decision on how exactly to demark the different geographical regions across the world. But this is the best we could come up with, and I think it fairly represents large regions, geographical regions across the globe. And then on the right hand side, you would see the total losses for the last decade. So, i.e., from 1st of January 2009 to 31st December 2018. In that chart, you can again clearly see the top region is again South China, Indochina, Indonesia, and Philippines, followed again by East Mediterranean and the Black Sea with 153 total losses. The third region with the highest number of total losses is Japan, Korea, North China, 117, and then followed by British Isles, North Sea, English Channel, and Bay of Biscay with 77 total losses. In the last decade, we've had a total of 1,036 total losses. This slide just shows you graphical representation of the same. The blue balloons would give you the 10-year total loss period, and the size of the balloon is representing the number of losses, and the red ones within that represents the 2018 numbers. So as you can see, South China, Japan, Korea, and East Mediterranean are the largest regions which have topped the total losses. The balloon on the bottom left corner, as you see, with 226 total losses, is all other regions. We obviously ran out of space to put it on the chart, so we had put it in the middle of the Pacific. But that doesn't mean this particular balloon is representing losses in that region. This is all other losses in the world. If we now look at all of the total losses by the types of vessels, we see the category of cargo vessels coming on top, and this has consistently been on top for many years now. So 15 losses on cargo vessels, followed by 11 losses on fishing vessels, and 4 tugs were lost, and followed by 3 passenger vessels and 3 tankers lost in 2018. If you look at the last decade of total losses by types of vessels, you can see again cargo vessels and fishing vessels still come up on top with a large percentage of losses. So 429 cargo vessels have been lost in the last decade, and 149 fishing vessels were lost. And together they account for more than almost 60% of the total losses in the past decade. Just another representation of the major losses that we saw in 2018. This is the graphical representation of where these losses happened. The colors of the balloons would actually tell you the type of the vessel, and the names of the vessels are mentioned in where. These are the 10 largest vessels lost in 2018. Quite a few of them you probably not know, but some of them are quite high-profile vessels that were lost, and none so than the tanker Sanchi, which was lost, and very unfortunately, with the entire crew was lost as well with the vessel in the tanker explosion, fire and explosion that happened after the collision in South China Sea. It is unfortunate that over the years and all the hard work that we have done as an industry, we still see losses like the Sanchi, where the complete loss of crew has happened, and it's something that it brings a somber reminder to all of us that there's still a lot of work to be done for all of us in the industry to try and make it a lot more safer, not only for the people on board, but also for other interests, the vessel itself, and also in today's context, the environment. And we have to be making sure that losses are contained. We operate them in such a manner that we can, if not eliminate, but to reduce these losses to contain damage to the environment, life, and property. Obviously, as per SOLAS, life at sea is seafarers' first priority, and that remains so, but environment is not too far behind. We then sliced the total losses by the cause of loss. Now, just to let you know, this is a difficult piece of information that we have to gather, because you can get a cause of loss as just a one-liner, and when we collect this data, and details are generally not available for all these losses. It is very hard to say or very hard to pick out root cause analysis for each loss. But in this slide and in this analysis, what we have done is we've taken the first cause that we know for these losses. The graph on the right tells you the foundering or sinking was the biggest cause for the total losses in 2018, which amounted to 30. And wreck and standing or grounding was the next cause for the losses at 9. Fire and explosion We've had 4 cases of total losses where fire and explosion was the primary cause, and followed by hull damage, like holes in the vessel on ship side or cracks, etc. Machinery damage has also been a cause for one of the losses. Now, obviously, we understand that there could be a fire and explosion which leads to foundering as well, but unfortunately, as I said, it's very hard to start to go to root cause analysis onto each and every one of these losses. And essentially, that role and that job is for the flag states to carry out the investigation after the losses, and hopefully we hope that these investigation reports are available for each and every vessel in relevant times, so that lessons can be learned. On the left hand side, the graph shows you the top five causes of total losses, and as expected, foundering is the biggest cause, followed by wrecked and stranded vessels, and then followed by fire and explosion. So foundering has been the cause of over half of all the total losses over the past decade, and it has even accounted a higher share of losses through 2018, 30 of them, which means more than 65%. Now, if we look at the, talking about total losses, as I said, we also look at all the casualties that we are able to collect as a data from the industry. In 2018, we looked at all the incidents and casualties that happened, and these include the 46 total losses that were there in 2018. We had 2,698 casualties in 2018. And this, of course, is very similar to what we had back in 2017. So there's only 1% decrease in number of casualties. So as I said earlier in the opening remarks, that we as an industry should not sit back and think that the total losses have been declining and we've been improving. There is certainly a lot of work still needs to be done on the lines of safety to improve and to reduce the number of casualties that have happened over the years. When we looked at the causes of these total casualties, machinery damage and failure was the top cause of incidents around the globe. I think almost 40% of these casualties out of the 2,698 casualties, 40% were machinery damage, followed by collision and wrecks at 12%. If we divide these total casualties by different regions, East Mediterranean and Black Sea is the region where we've had the maximum number of losses, or sorry, the maximum number of casualties. I should not say losses to avoid confusion. And we've had 544 casualties in this region, which is up 81 over the previous year, i.e. 2017. This is followed by British Isles, North Sea, English Channel, and Bay of Biscay at 494 casualties, and which is also up by 65. This is followed by South China, Indochina, Indonesia, and Philippines, which, if you will recall, was the region with the highest number of total losses over the last decade. It is interesting to note that British Isles, North Sea, English Channel is the area which has consistently been high on number of casualties in this area. I guess I understand that our industry is very international in nature. Vessels from all over the regions would transit these areas. However, you would expect a little bit more control over these waters, because generally they are very high density traffic areas. Having said that, there are a lot of safety measures, protocols, reporting, shipping lanes in these areas. Despite all that, British Isles has been one of the top regions for these losses. Some of you have asked me earlier that why is this the case, and apart from the fact that we've had that these are very high densely navigated areas, there is also another case of the reporting of incidences. We have seen over the years that the reporting of incidents and casualties in different parts of the world vary significantly. So you may find that North America West Coast is at the bottom with 102 casualties, or West Mediterranean for that matter with 103 casualties, where the East Mediterranean is 544. It also is influenced, these numbers are influenced by how much reporting is done by these regions. And that is something beyond the control of us, but this is the numbers that we calculate. If you look at now the same number of the casualties over a period of the last 10 years, as I said earlier, the same region, that is East Mediterranean Black Sea, tops with 4,757 casualties, followed by British Isles, North Sea, English Channel, and Bay of Biscay with close to 4,100 casualties in all. There are plenty of other statistics that we have analyzed in the report over the years, and it would be, if you're interested, please look at our website, and the report is free to download, and you can have a look over the previous reports and versions as well. As I said earlier, the second part of our report looks at trends and developments and as to what's been happening in the industry, what we think are the key trends and issues concerning the industry. The first one, of course, there's no surprise here that we, back in 2016 report, Allianz highlighted the issue of larger vessels bringing bigger losses. And with that, we also highlighted the big issue, the very topical issue of container ship fires. And it has been a big pain point for the industry in the last year, especially, or a year and a half, that the ultra large container vessels or the larger container vessels have been involved in casualties, some of them very serious from a loss perspective. But one of the key trends that we have seen over the years now is that the larger vessels are bringing in much more complicated and bigger losses from an impact perspective. Of course, as an industry, we are working on these, but this is a serious problem that needs to be tackled by a concerted effort throughout the industry. The other big trend that we've seen, the cargo and fire risks have also increased over the years. Some of the numbers that we've looked at has shown that container carrying capacity has actually almost doubled over the past decade, which obviously is because of economies of scale, but that also is bringing issues with fire and explosion on board, continue to generate much larger losses than we saw previously. The other trends, of course, in the industry that we are highlighting and we've been highlighting in the last few years has been the improvement and the technology growth that we have seen in the maritime sector. And over the years, gone are the days when we were just moving from paper charts to electronic charts. We have a huge amount of technological advances in the maritime industry today. And this is pointing itself to a much larger technological change over the next 5 to 10 years. We're obviously talking about autonomous vessels as well. How long will they take to come into the mainstream is anybody's guess. But I think personally, I think that will be a more phased introduction. Some parts of the vessel's operations and functions will become automated slowly and steadily, but I think we are still far away from seeing autonomous vessels in the mainstream shipping sector. Of course, with the increase in technology, cyber exposures cannot be far behind, and in the last couple of years, we've also seen the shipping industry for the first time being impacted significantly by cyber attacks. You all might recall the cyber attack which happened to Maersk at cost hundreds of millions of dollars and quite a large disruption. And this is the major loss that we know because of the cyber attack. But one of the problems with the cyber exposure is that there's a lot of underreporting of cyber attacks in our industry. We know that the attacks are happening. We hear it on case-by-case basis, but there is a lot of underreporting, which is basically underplaying the risk that the cyber attacks pose to the shipping industry. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, there hasn't been any casualty of a vessel because of cyber attacks so far. But that, unfortunately, is probably playing on the minds of ship owners and the industry in general, that this isn't such a big problem. But we believe that this is going to be one of the biggest issues that will come up in the years ahead. Continue with the first trend that we looked at. I think we posted this statistics a few years ago, just because it was relevant. Again, we posted it in last year's report. But if you look at the growth of container ships in the last 50 years, back in 1968, the Encounter Bay was one of the first container vessels with 1,530 TEUs. And fast forward 50 years, in 2018, 2019, we are looking at close to 24,000 TEU vessels. A lot of you would have already been on board the vessels, but if somebody who hasn't been on some of these vessels, just the sheer size and scale of these vessels is intimidating. And container capacity, carrying capacity, has increased by almost 1,500% since they were first introduced. So one of the biggest issues, of course, with these vessels is now that the size and scale of these vessels make it so hard to control any small fire which starts on any one of the containers. Back in 68 on Encounter Bay, I'm not sure how many number of crew were available at that time, but I would still believe that there were 25 to 30 odd crew members there. And now we're talking about these 20,000 plus TEU container vessels, where the crew numbers are now diminished down to 15. These systems, so firefighting systems, fire prevention systems are available. They have kept up with the regulations as such, but we think that there's a lot more which needs to be done to control these fires. Just to put a perspective on this, that the major fires on large container ships in the last few years is a little list for you. CCNI Morocco was back in 2016 was a 9,000 TEU vessel which had major fire. 2017 we had the MSC Daniela with 13,800 TEU vessel on fire. 2018, of course, the high-profile Maersk Honum with 15,200 TEU vessel was lost, was under fire with a major loss. Then in 2019 we've already seen two major losses with the Antian Express and APL Vancouver, which had fires. Some of the numbers associated with these losses are staggering. There's another vessel back in 2012. You would recall. Just trying to remember. I think it was the MSC Flamina at that time. Yes, that's mentioned at the bottom. I missed it. It was just settled recently in court, and the cargo owners were asked by the court to pay more than 200 million in losses for the MSC Flamina. You can imagine it takes more than 7 years to settle these cases, in some cases much longer, because of the very complicated general average that comes along with most of these losses. At this point of time, I don't know the exact numbers, but Maersk Honum would be costing more than 300 million already. It's not finished as yet. Yantian Express, APL Vancouver, both up in hundreds of millions of losses to the industry. Needless to say that this, at this point of time, is one of the biggest issues that we are facing in our industry. People have again asked what is the reason why we are having these issues on board container ships. I mean, again, as I said, it's very hard to pinpoint one particular reason, but there are plenty of issues. One of the key issues that we know has been around in the industry for many, many years has been the misdeclaration of cargo on board. these vessels. Now, if you are carrying 15 to 20,000 containers on board the vessel, the chances of misdeclared cargoes on a container carrying misdeclared cargoes or a dangerous goods misdeclared as safe is exponentially increased. From some of the numbers that we gathered from the industry, from the TT Club and International Cargo Handling Coordination Association, the ICHCA, we know there have been roughly 130 million containers transported around the world in a year annually, and out of that, I think we can say we have around 6 million of them which contain dangerous goods. These are known dangerous goods. Now, TT Club estimates that out of these 1.3 million boxes aren't properly declared or misdeclared, or they are not properly lashed, which is a huge number. That means 1.3 million containers with the potential of creating one of these large losses or large fires on board the vessels. Obviously, the issue, as I said earlier, is the firefighting capabilities. We all know that to effectively fight a fire, the first 3 minutes are crucial. If you can attack a fire and contain it within the first few minutes, we have the best chance of containing the spread of the fire. Now, with the lack of crew on board these vessels and lack of and the lack of firefighting capabilities on these large vessels, doing that is practically impossible. That could also be one of the reasons that we are seeing the increase of these fires. I think as per IUMI, which is the Marine Insurance International Organization, we estimated that there is a major fire on container vessels every 25 days, which is a staggering number. If you thought these numbers were high, this is the nightmare scenario that we calculated as part of our study. We looked at the maximum loss that we could expect from a large casualty, and we created a scenario, or we simulated a scenario where a cruise ship, a large cruise ship, and one of these ultra-large container ships would be involved in a collision, and this could actually lead to a total loss amount of close to $4 billion. Now, you might remember that the Costa Concordia, which was, of course, a single vessel, which was involved which went aground of the southern Italian islands, and that loss has costed the industry close to 2.2 billion and still counting, because it's not completely done. So it is quite feasible that a loss where two of these large container vessels in an environmentally sensitive location where wreck removal is involved could actually end up costing the industry close to $4 billion US. Now that number is absolutely staggering. And I know I was presenting this at the Salvage and Wreck Removal Conference a couple of weeks ago, and there were some very excited salvos looking at these numbers, rubbing their hands with a twinkle in their eyes, I guess. Jokes apart, I think these kind of losses are now are not something that cannot happen, are not just on paper. We think that if this happens, it could actually be such a high number. Some of the further trends and developments that we've seen and are worth highlighting. Of course, the industry is gearing up for the sulfur cap on 1st of January 2020, which comes into force, and most of us are preparing for that. The ship owning community has been preparing it for a few years now. There have been calls by some of the ship owning organizations to postpone the implementation date of 1st of January 2020, but I personally think it's unlikely that this will be postponed. Now, we certainly think that shipping as such an important industry globally, and the trade that runs through and the responsibilities on our shoulders as well to address the issues of climate change. And this was an important step taken by IMO. The problem what we see is that the implementation of Sulfur Cap 2020 and the different methods to address this have had not enough clarity over the years that we have seen. For example, scrubbers were touted as the solution a few years ago when the regulation was announced. But as per certain sources, we think that not more than less than 4,000 scrubbers are at the moment operating in the shipping industry for a fleet of more than 70,000 ocean-going vessels across the world. So it's a small fraction of vessels which have tried to fit the scrubbers. Obviously, it's a capital-intensive measure. Not everybody is willing to do that. However, this solution has been overcomplicated now by many of the coastal states banning the open loop scrubbers. Now, we don't have the number on how many vessels were fitted with open loop scrubbers, but obviously the owners who invested the money in open loop scrubbers are now having to face another conundrum of what to do, whether to convert them into hybrid scrubbers or go in from some other more expensive alterations to these scrubbers, open loop scrubbers already fitted. The other issue with sulfur cap that we personally think is going to affect the industry is, of course, the compatibility with the low sulfur fuel and its impact on the engines. Now, I think last year, some of you might remember there were quite a few losses of main engine or machinery damage or auxiliary engine damages because of the fuels, because of the low sulfur fuel or certain other fuels that were bunkered in places like Houston and some of the other regions. And we had a series of claims of damage to main engines. We never, as an industry, never found out what exactly was the root cause of this, but it was estimated that it was probably the fuel coming out of one of the refineries, which wasn't compatible with certain types of engines. Now, the key problem that we think is that these losses could happen again once the major part of the industry starts to use the low sulfur fuel that is going to be made widely available, and we hope that it's made widely available across the world for the rest of the fleet which is not using scrubbers. But overall, one of the estimates, the annual cost of moving to the low sulfur fuel is close to $60 billion a year. This is what we think that the cost is going to be. Further down, I think we looked at earlier this year, we saw a heightening of the political risk across the Middle East. Most of you would be aware of the attacks on tankers and some of the other vessels that took place in Fujairah and also in the Red Sea. And this risk is becoming the political risk and territorial disputes and conflicts. Shipping is an easy target for most of this. We know that already from history, and we've had this over the years. And again, this year has seen a sharp spike in that particular risk as well. As I mentioned earlier, over the years we've also started to analyze some of our own claims that Allianz has been involved with. And we looked at close to 230,000, 240,000 insurance industry claims where we have information which is with a total value of roughly 8.8 billion or close to 9.9 billion dollars between July 2013 and July 2018. We looked at these losses or claims to say, and tried to see what were the values, what were the numbers associated with these. So by value of claims, we looked at these. We saw 16% of these claims were because of ship sinking and collision, followed by fire and explosion, which was the cause of 13% of these. Damage goods, including handling and storage issues, of 12%, followed by machinery damage, 12%. This is by value of claims. But the number of claims, if you look at this, damaged goods, including handling damage, is 22%. Crime and other issues causing losses was 5%. Ship sinking and all by 4%. So no surprise there that ship sinking and collision incidents are the most expensive cause of losses for insurance industry, accounting to close to 16% of all the claims. And machinery damage incidents such as engine failure has also caused more than $1 billion worth of damage in the last 5 years. And this is what I meant is the key concern for us insurers, that the sulfur cap of 2020 would increase these claims of machinery damage incidents substantially. And the last point is that more than a third of these shipping incidents between January 2009 and December were caused by machinery damage. Just to clarify, these are the claims that Allianz knows or Allianz has been involved with. There are close to 240,000 claims that we looked at in the last 5 years. So summarizing the Safety and Shipping Review 2019, I think just a quick summary would be in order to end this presentation. I think as I said, 46 total losses in 2018. This is the lowest in this century that we have seen as far as total losses is concerned. We had 200 total losses in the year 2000. So over the years, the safety trend, the good trend of decreasing total losses has continued with a sharp decline in 2018. And the industry can take a little pat on their back to that. Yes, we have done in general a lot of good work over the years, and that has resulted in decline, a steady decline over the last decade or so of total losses. However, there's still a lot of work to be done because we saw 2,619 shipping incidents or casualties in 2018, which was less than 1% change from 2017. So the number of casualties still remain more or less the same. Some interesting facts for you. Whenever we do these statistics, there are some funny facts come up. Wednesday seems to be the most frequent day for losses. 12 in 2018 and 169 total losses in the last 10 years. Not sure why Wednesday is the day with the maximum number of total losses, but there you go. That's what statistics tell us. So in the end, I think the message that we think, or we try to project from the statistics and analysis of our shipping and safety review is that good job done by the shipping industry, but there's still a lot to be done, and look forward to a much safer 2019. Thank you very much for this, and you can download the report. It's freely available on our website, which is www.agcs.allianz.com. So please feel free to download the this and previous reports if you. Thanks a lot. Any questions?